Amazing. Well, thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Henry Riley. I'm a presenter and reporter at LBC Radio. Pleasure to welcome you to this Politics UK event. It's part of their series, as you heard mentioned, where they're seeking to bring these leading political figures into conversation with engaged audiences on the key issues that are, of course, shaping our country at the moment. The event tonight also being live streamed, again, as you heard, across the Politics News Group's network, so you can stay up to date with the conversation, and any future events just follow at Politics UK on Twitter or X, and you can find them at politicsuk.com. We're delighted tonight to be joined by Mike Tapp, who is the Minister for Migration and Citizenship. Mike, thank you for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Great to be here.
Great to have you with us. So the format of the event tonight, I'll have a short question and answer session with myself and Mike, a bit like a sort of fireside chat. Then we have some questions from the audience that we have. There's some that have come in online as well, and we'll conclude with a brief panel discussion as well afterwards, reflecting on some of the themes that Mike and I talk about. But without further ado, let's get underway. Mike, let's address firstly the elephant in the room. It's not an elephant, it's a dog. Would you like to introduce who this is?
This is, a horse.
Yes.
He's a Rhodesian Ridgeback named Scooby, 10 years old.
And does he come with you everywhere? Or?
Well, he doesn't. I was saying to the guys in the bar before the show that he's a 10-year-old dog, and I am his whole world, you know? So what I try and do is give him as much experience in life as possible.
Right.
So take him to as many places as I possibly can. So he's been, travelled Europe, he's been to many restaurants, comes to work when I can take him to work, he's been active with the media as well. So it's trying to give him that life experience as an old dog.
Yeah,
and
brilliant.
as you can see, he's very happy.
And we're having a nice snooze by the look of it as well. Brilliant. Well, let's get into some of the key themes. I think we have to start, and I think you know where this is going, understandably, with the appalling, tragic, whatever word you want to use, murder of Henry Novak, the 18-year-old student at Southampton University. It's really moved on over the last few days, obviously, with the sentencing. We've heard from the Prime Minister today. I mean, just first, can we get your reflections as a Home Office Minister, ultimately, on what we saw play out?
Look, my reflection starts where the statement from the family ended. Which is that, of course, this is an absolute tragedy for the family, but also for the whole country. And we mustn't see this divide us. Instead, these sort of tragic events should bring us together to ensure that we deal with these things properly in the right way under British values, which means with that decency and within the rule of law, to ensure that these things simply can't happen again. We've all seen that footage. It's absolutely sickening. I couldn't watch it twice, so I can't imagine what the family are going through, and my heart really does go out to them.
You're talking about handling it with British values. Are you saying then that some politicians are not doing that?
Well, I was turned off by Nigel Farage's response to this. It felt like it was seeking to divide. I was pleased with Shabana's response, Keir Starmer's response, Kemi Badenoch's response as well, which is about getting to the bottom of how this happened with the independent investigation conducted by the IOPC, and then making sure that the lessons are learned for the future. And we mustn't overcorrect when it comes to ensuring that minorities are protected, or that those who aren't minorities are protected. Everyone is the same, everyone is equal. Our law enforcement should always be colourblind, as should politicians, and that's why we've got to unite and ensure that lessons are learned and this doesn't happen again.
You mentioned that there is an IOPC investigation going on. I think it's my understanding one of the officers has actually subsequently resigned from the force. But I mean, ultimately, we have the body cam footage. You must be watching that as a Home Office Minister, surely concerned at the conduct of the officers.
Absolutely concerned at the conduct of the officers, but what we need to do is get the full picture. So of course there's that call beforehand, there's conversations between colleagues on the way to the incident, there's the frame of mind of those, there's the conditions that they're in, and this isn't making excuses, by the way, it's just that the IOPC need to fully understand the full picture to come to a conclusion to see what happens next.
You shouldn't be handcuffing someone who's saying, I can't breathe repeatedly, and saying that...
Absolutely not. No, I've worked in law enforcement myself with the National Crime Agency, and look, decisions are split second, And there is that fog of war, and you do have to move quickly. But on the face of it, from what we've seen from that body cam footage, it was wrong. But let's leave this to the IOPC. This has to be an independent investigation.
Okay, on the broader picture, just staying with this for the moment, this has arisen based on the facts we know from a call that claimed that there was racism. Now, a judge and jury found that that was not the case, and that the claims of racism from the killer, who I'm not going to even mention his name, but were unfounded. There's a lot of talk about the policing in this country. Is there a sense that perhaps the officers went in with an impression in mind? They thought it had been racism, and we see appalling racism play out, but they went in not open-minded, clearly. They had an idea that there was a racist incident, and they went in on that and that alone.
Look, I very much hope not, because we should be policing with every person equal, simple as that. This is, sorry to be boring, but this is why the investigation is so important, because we do need to get to the bottom of that mindset when the police officers were arriving, and then we correct any wrongs that there were.
Okay. Going back to specifically your brief, which is migration and citizenship, let's talk about migration. It's something that we often speak about in the media, and the net migration figures we've had recently show a huge decline. I think it's 171,000 from memory net into this country. With that, though, comes a lot of people leaving, emigrating the country, who are people in their 20s, people in their 30s, who are sort of dismayed at the job prospects. I mean, it doesn't completely paint a rosy picture, does it?
That's the spin.
But it's true, isn't it? I mean, you hear, you just hear
it's your job to do the spin. I'll do the facts.
Well, go on then.
So this is what we've got. At the peak, we're nearly 1 million in 1 year. Do you know, 1 in 30 of all people in this country arrived in just 4 years. So this was unprecedented levels of migration. So that's now down by around 82% from that peak, around 48% in the last year. And I'll tell you now, emigration, people leaving the country, has stayed flat. Now, of course, young people leave the country because they want to experience life. They want to study. They want to, go out and have some fun. They want to work abroad, and then they come back. So actually, that immigration figure has remained flat. And the fact is that net migration is down by 82% from its peak.
Well, I'm not blaming the Labour government specifically, but you say it's remained flat. I mean, that takes into account the Boris Johnson years, for example, and other years. But ultimately, there is still a problem, blame who you want, of people who we want in this country to work, who are moving abroad. Some, yes, want to go and work in Australia for a year or so, but some are saying, do you know what, I'm not putting up with this, I'm going to live in Dubai or wherever else.
Well, I think that's very hypothetical.
It's not, we're seeing it.
Yeah, people do that, but the data suggests that it's absolutely flat. One of the disadvantages we have at the moment is in 2021, there was a methodology change on how this was collected.
I hate when that happens.
Absolutely, which makes it more difficult to monitor.
Right.
But look, my view is that this country is great because people stay here and they work hard. And if you want to move to Dubai and make pretty crappy social media videos and fitness plans, then that's your loss because you're not making Britain great. And what's got us to where we are now is through people working hard and paying their taxes. Look, I like to think of my granddad, who after the war essentially had not much, not particularly educated. He went and he worked as a Coleman's mustard salesman, door to door to door, working hard, up to regional manager, paid his tax, raised a family, good, honest, hard work. That's what has made Britain great. And I urge the whole country to stay and help make Britain great, because it's government's responsibility to provide the opportunities for work, which of course we're working hard at doing. And it's the country's responsibility to work hard. And I think we've got that in our blood. That's what Britain is.
Let me give you a bit more spin for you to address. Do you want to congratulate the previous Conservative government for helping get that number down?
Look, when there's good policy from a previous government, of which, of course, there is across the board. There's good policy from governments over the last 4, 5, 6 decades. When you inherit a good bit of policy, you don't change it. But what you do is you build on it. So let's take net migration, for example. So we freeze the health and social care visa. We froze student visas from 4 different countries. We're working with universities to ensure that the standards on compliance are higher. We've also, of course, raised the skilled workers to degree level. We've raised the language levels to A-level, foreign language A-level. We've taken 100 countries off of the occupation list that have access to that market. So look, if there was good policy from a previous government, we don't remove that, but we've built on that. And that's why in the last year, it's come down a further 48%.
The ILR changes, indefinite leave to remain, is a topic that's been spoken about a lot. Labour's plan, and I mean you're behind it, so you'll tell me not, but it's raising that from 5 to 10 years ultimately. When is that going to come into force?
Right. So what we're looking at now is we've had a massive consultation which received 200,000 responses, which is fantastic because it's important that as politicians we're listening to the public. That's who we're here to serve. So that's currently going through full analysis. I've been involved in some of the sampling of that. And then we'll come up with a full picture and the full policy around autumn time and update on it. The 5 to 10 year policy, let me just explain that. I did touch on it earlier. So we will see 1.6 million people settle between 2026 and 2030 who arrived under that Boris wave, the so-called Boris wave. Now, there is a risk that will put more pressure on our welfare bill and public services. So we're trying to protect the economy here, but we've got to find that right balance, which is why the consultation is really important. And we've said it all along, this will be a firm, but also fair system. And I'm saying to my officials, day in, day out, we've done the firm, let's make sure we are always considering the fair, because we want to give people the opportunity, people who come to this country, the opportunity to integrate and contribute. And if people are trying to integrate and contribute more but are being held back by our system, that's wrong. And we will come up with the right answers, I can assure you. I can't make policy announcements now.
Fine. But when is that coming in then? When do you hope it comes in?
So we'll have the analysis finished soonish, right. And then come the autumn, there'll be more.
Another aspect of the migration job is small boats crossings. I don't know if it's specifically your brief, but obviously within your department, small boat crossings. How's smashing the gangs going?
Well, look, we're working hard on the illegal migration side of things. Firstly, I will say that a high percentage of those who are here illegally did come off of legal visas. So we're working hard to ensure that doesn't happen. That's why we're raising the levels for, sort of one of the reasons we're raising the levels for skilled workers, but also the compliance with students and universities, because we were seeing far too many come to the country as students, for example, and then looking to claim asylum. That's dropped by about 30% so far, but there are more measures coming in to make that even better. Now, small boats is a big issue. We know that. We've listened to the country. And if there was an easy fix, then, and if there was a silver bullet, then we would have done that already, and so would have the Conservatives, because it does no one any favours to have insecure borders. It's absolutely vital for a nation state that we can control our borders. What I will say on that is that deportations and removals are up to 67,000 now. That's increased by around 41%. Hotel use is halved since its peak. Asylum claims are down by around 12%. This year the numbers are lower compared to last year, but we're not celebrating that yet because we need a full...
What, on small boat crossings?
Just at this point,
right.
Yeah. But the reason we're not celebrating that at this point is because, of course, there are factors like the weather that come into play, so we want a longer period. We're working really hard with our international partners all the way up to Iraq to ensure that the supply chain of small boats and engines is interrupted. And what people will have noticed in the media is that those crossings now, more people are being crammed into less boats, and that's because of that squeeze on the supply chain. There's still a lot to do, and there will be more measures announced in future.
And can you see a world where there is no one crossing on a small boat or a dinghy?
I mean, that's obviously what we'd like, but you look at clandestine entry through things like lorries, that still happens, you know, and that was a big issue around a decade and a half ago, and that was dealt with through physical security measures, predominantly in Calais. You know, we can't do that with such a vast border, a sea border.
Are there enough safe and legal routes?
Safe and legal routes is another part of what we're looking at. The way that the Home Secretary comes at this is she's looking for solutions to the problem, and that is that firm approach with increased deportation removals, moving people out of hotels and into military sites, bringing our asylum system in line with Europe so that there isn't that asylum shopping, reviewing asylum every 30 months so that it's not automatically leading to settlement, making sure that family reunion isn't automatic. That brings us in line with Europe, so you don't get that so-called asylum shopping. But look, there's no doubt that there's a hell of a lot more for us to do on this, and we will continue working hard to deliver that secure border.
We saw a few years ago some of what played out after the wake of the appalling Southport murders.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, linking back to Henry Novak, there's a suggestion that Tommy Robinson is urging people to go and demonstrate.
Right, okay. What, in Southampton?
In Southampton. Clearly people are very angry. How would you urge people to use that anger in a way that obviously doesn't spill out into unrest on the streets?
It does no one any favours. What makes Britain great is the fact that we can unite when there's security issues and policing issues and find the solutions. And actually, if we work together in public, it makes it easier for the government to also deliver that. So look, there's no need for violence or unrest, of course, and it would be absolutely unreasonable. And anyone who is looking to protest, which is fine, by the way, protest is absolutely valid. Just look at what the family have said, because that's what matters now. They're the people that matter at this very moment.
On the broader subject of politics, you're too busy to read the 1,500 pages from the Peter Mandelson files that were...
I've read it all.
Have you read it all? Yeah. It's quite embarrassing, isn't it? I mean, Pat McFadden's saying that the conversations he's having is who can we tax to spend more on welfare? It doesn't look great, does it? It's the Work and Pension Secretary.
Well, what we've seen here is one of the most transparent exercises you've ever seen from a government.
Cost £1 million quid.
Which includes private messages.
Yeah.
And look, I dare many people to give their private messages to their employers. So that transparency is...
Not running the country, in fairness, though, are they?
No, politicians are human. And look, Pat McFadden is a fantastic Minister of State. And what he's doing there is he's just sharing some frustrations. And there's no secret to the fact that he wants to bring the welfare bill down. You know, that is required because it is high and it's due to grow exponentially. So he said that in public, and really that's all he was saying in that text message.
Nick Thomas-Symonds was saying he had his phone nicked. I mean, so we've had Morgan McSweeney's phone nicked, Nick Thomas-Symonds' phone nicked. Not making light of it, because it's not a very nice experience having your phone stolen, but it's curious, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't paint London in a particularly great light that people within government are having their phones stolen. Well,
phone theft is rife, and politicians are members of the public and can be careless with holding their phones out. You've got to be careful. Unfortunately, it's petty crime, which we've seen is very organised as well, and those phones can go as far as China and be resold. I mean, I don't doubt that people have had their phones nicked. It's the nature of society. Petty crime changes, doesn't it? That used to be, you know, robbing glove compartments in vehicles. That used to be petty crime, but people don't tend to keep things in them anymore, so it's turned to phones.
On Lord Mandelson, I mean, it was a disastrous appointment, wasn't it? I mean, have you ever dealt with him personally?
Well, Keir Starmer firstly has been really clear that he absolutely regrets that appointment, and that's the right thing, and we need to move on past that. I have had dealings with Peter Mandelson. In fact, I did a media round, I think the day after he was, I can't remember which bit of it was, the scandal.
Right,
but at the very beginning, I was out in the media, and look, I was never going to defend his actions, and you'll see from the records that I've received one message from him, and that was his resignation, and that's it. So.
Okay. Keir Starmer's future is something that's spoken about. I don't know if you've been to Makerfield to campaign yet. Have you been?
Not yet, no.
Are you planning to?
I will go for a couple of days, yes.
Right. Do you keen to see the King of the North back in Westminster?
Look, yes, he'll be a fantastic MP, as he is a fantastic mayor. But what I will say is this all is a little bit weird. And I think the public probably see that. And I think Beth Rigby was making that point earlier. Sorry.
Yeah, well,
just as fantastic
journalist.
Was making that point earlier. There are weird conversations going on. There are weird approaches, and I think the public do look at this and think, what's that all about? But that's politics, and I've learned very quickly. I've only been in politics for a couple of years that there's some weirdness to Westminster. So.
There is, but ultimately it comes from your colleagues as well. I mean, Wes Streeton came out saying, resigned from the government firstly, then saying he wants to be leader. We had other ministers resign, parliamentary private secretaries resign. Is Keir Starmer secure in his future? Is he going to be leading Labour into the next general election?
Well, firstly, Wes Streeting was a fantastic health secretary, and he's brought down waiting lists to the lowest in 17 years. That is something that we can all be really thankful for, and I absolutely am as a member of the government. When it comes to Keir Starmer, I'm absolutely clear on this, and this comes from my background of service and from my love of this country, that we have to have stability. And look, let me give you a very quick example of from my very small brief across the whole of government, a very important brief, but small. I met with some farmers the other day in my constituency.
I bet they love that.
Well, I get on very well with them.
Right.
And they were talking to me about some of the challenges they face. And I am sympathetic, but I didn't tell them whether I agreed or disagreed with government policy. And they said to me, look, why do you vote for these things when they're affecting us like this from their view? And I said, look, if I rebel, I lose my job in government, right? Quite rightly, because of collective agreement. And the farmers had just spent about 6 months lobbying me on sheep shearers to allow sheep shearers to come into the country who essentially follow the sun. They follow the sea. We call them sexy sheep shearers from New Zealand. Right. And look, when I came into this role in the Home Office, I didn't understand about sheep shearers. Yeah. Why would I?
Sexy sheep
or
shearers.
Sexy sheep shearers. Why would I? But it took them a few months to essentially get that into me and say, look, we actually need this. And I changed my mind, and they're here. That was through hard work from a minister who'd been in place at that point for about 6 months. If I go, they've got to go and do that again. Now, that's in my very small brief. Imagine at prime ministerial level, we've got a whole country to run. There's a lot to learn, and most prime ministers say that they'll be better when they come back. Well, let's let Keir Starmer have that chance. He's only 2 years into a 5-year term with a massive majority, and we're seeing some successes. We're starting to turn that corner. We're the highest growth in the G7. That's quite outstanding given global events. We've had 6 interest rate cuts. Inflation's coming down. I've just spoken about what we're doing on the NHS. Net migration's down by about 82%. Free breakfast clubs. Investment in buses. In my constituency, we've had investment in schools.
Dover and Deal.
In Dover and Deal. We've had investment in our schools to make them safe for our kids, so our kids don't die in our schools. Right? That was well overdue. I've had investment from Heritage to fix one of the roofs on Walmer Castle. That's really important for the local population. I've got £20 million Pride in Place funding. Now, my constituents are going to start seeing that and feeling that, but it takes time, and policy takes time to get through our sluggish democracy in our parliament before you then start feeling it. So it's not up to Labour MPs, in my view, and I respect every single one of my colleagues without exception, but it's not up to them to decide who the leader is. It's up to the people, and they do that at a general election through voting for their constituency MP.
But he will lead.
And we have to let him get to 5 years. And
he will lead them into the next election.
I'm absolutely confident that he will, yes. That's what I'd like to see.
Okay. And I know you love hypotheticals, but if there was a different Labour leader, they'd have to call a general election, wouldn't they? Well, they should call a general election.
When the Conservatives did it, I've no doubt I tweeted that they should.
Yes. Well, you've reminded me. Let me have a look.
Well, I won't have deleted it. And I ask all of my colleagues to check back at their previous social media interactions, and if they were calling for a general election when the Conservatives did it, then the public will see it as hypocritical to not us have a general election. I don't want to see a general election. I want to get to 5 years. So I in the Home Office, so Siobhan in the Home Office, Alex Norris, across the whole of government, so we can deliver for the people of Britain. It's about putting country first, not egos, not who we want to be leader because of their personality. Keir Starmer's in. He's very stable. Yeah. He does detail, and he is stable. If you look at our the current state of the economy and how we are excelling above the rest of the G7 nations, there's still a hell of a lot of work to do. Don't get me wrong here. I'm not sat here saying that everything is rosy. It simply isn't. We've got so much work to do. And we don't ignore what happened at the May elections. That sent a really clear message. It's about delivery now, and we only get delivery with stability.
I've got some audience questions. Before I do that, another thing I was keen to ask you about, lastly, with regard to your constituency. What on earth is going on with your AI videos that you've been posting?
Have you seen what the AI bot did to Scooby's ears?
I've not seen that yet, but I will have to look.
So Scooby's in the videos, and they've given him pointy ears. I don't know if you can see, but they're quite floppy.
Yes.
What we're trying to do there,
Sleep.
it's a little bit of fun.
Yes.
But actually, there is a serious side to it, and I like to get around the schools and speak to kids. We've done Tap Into Reading, which was getting kids to read theatrically in a competition at the end, and that was reading VE Day poems and literature. And what I'm trying to do is get kids involved in history. And I remember from history lessons, and I loved history, by the way, but I did get a bit bored sometimes, sat there, just being talked at and reading the textbook. So look, if we can bring that to some of the younger people through something a little bit more exciting using AI, then why not? It's a funny old thing because it's not particularly accurate at times. You've got spitfires flying all over the place, and the cliffs look a bit wrong as well. But that's the nature of AI. So it's a bit of fun, but it's trying to reach out to kids.
Okay, good. Well, that brings to a close our sort of fireside chat element. We've got some questions from the audience that I have got on the paper in front of me. So let me start with the first one's from Liam Aurora. Oh, we have
Liam, yeah.
Liam, do you want to? Is Liam reading it out, or yeah? Go on, Liam.
Yeah, sure. As someone with aims and aspirations in politics, I'm trying to build my political career. I'm an officer in my CLP, but I find it incredibly hard to work for MPs or to get jobs
Interesting.
for MPs. What advice can you give to young people like myself who want to build a career in politics, but find it hard to even get through the door?
Just people listening at home who wouldn't have heard. So you're an officer in your CLP and you're trying to build your political career.
Yeah, you're doing it right already, because I knew who you were, because of your activity with your CLP on social media. And come to events like this, meet with politicians and their staff as well, particularly their staff. They're probably easier to meet at events. Things like Labour Together, Labour to Win events, that, get along to them, meet people. And what do you do day to day? What's your... You told me earlier.
Yes,
yeah. And look, I encourage working in the real world, which you are. I think that gives you more to bring into politics.
Great. This is another one from Jack. We've had various tube strikes and whatnot, so I'll read this out. Is there a concrete timetable on, well, we've sort of gone over this, but maybe we'll go over it again, on when the ILR changes will be made, and will they be done via primary legislation or secondary via changes to immigration rules?
So we're obviously analysing a huge amount of information, but I will say that my consultation still continues, and I'm still meeting with stakeholders, people that are potentially impacted by it, and I actually learn the most. I had a Westminster Hall debate a few months ago talking about this, and politicians were great, but actually I learnt most going into the chamber and the gallery, and speaking with those who were observing, because they were impacted by some of the changes, and that led to further meetings. So I've gone off the question here a little bit.
No.
Autumn, secondary, primary legislation and rule changes, it depends on exactly where we land here.
Right.
But there's different options.
Okay. Linked to that, Michael had a question submitted to us online saying, do Labour backbenchers support the immigration reforms?
Well, on the whole, yes, absolutely. I've had support from the majority of the colleagues that I've spoken to. There are bits in there that are controversial, and I think that the 5 to 10 is a part of that.
Right.
But obviously we haven't settled where that will exactly land at this moment in time, and it is important to listen to our colleagues, who of course need to listen to constituents. But what I'll always say is go out, knock doors, speak to constituents. What you get in your inbox doesn't necessarily reflect exactly what's going on out on the ground. Look, More in Common polling does show that these policies are popular across all voter groups.
Is Councillor Kartik Bonker, I don't know if he's... Great. Do you have your question, Councillor? And which party are you from?
The Labour Party.
Labour Party, right. You're a home turf.
Well, my question is, I think you answered a little bit when it was going on, but many skilled workers, international graduates and families came to UK under the immigration rules that existed at the time and have since built their lives, careers and businesses here. How will the government ensure that future immigration reforms remain fair to those already contributing to the UK and provide certainty of people who made long-term decisions based on previous rules?
Yeah, and this is where, so I've explained the 5 to 10 year extension is aimed predominantly at those that came on low-skilled visas. 600,000 came in to fill 40,000 roles in the health and social care sector. So what we're doing now is analysing the data from the consultation and ensuring that we come up with the right answer that of course protects the economy, but at the same time rewards those who want to integrate and contribute.
But if we do see shortages, I mean, you mentioned some health and social care, hospitality, education. If we do see shortages in those areas...
The health and social care system that we've inherited is extremely difficult. It's broken. The system that we have has created a race to the bottom. I've met with care workers who have told me they want to promote. They want to move company to earn more money, but they can't because of their visa situation. That doesn't make any sense. So these are the sorts of stories that I've been hearing, and I can see people nodding. You've obviously heard the same stories that we do need to address. There's many displaced workers from sponsorship revocations as well who need to be filling the roles that are currently vacant in health and social care, and we're working closely with DHSC on that.
Did you have a follow-up or no? Great. This from, where has it got? Rita online asks, how do you suggest that we reduce the welfare bill? Of course, not your brief, but a hot political issue.
It's absolutely not my brief. We do need to reduce the welfare bill, but we need to do it sensitively in the right way. We need to ensure that people who genuinely need welfare are receiving it. And I've just spoken about some of the Home Office policy that we're doing to protect and ensure that the welfare bill doesn't grow further. That's the 5 to 10 year element that we're talking about.
Yeah, but I mean, the welfare bill at the moment, taking into account pensions and everything, I mean, costs more than we take in receipts from income tax. I mean, it's getting to a point where it's out of control, is it not?
There's a big job on our hands to bring that down, and I hope we manage to achieve that within our values, within British values, within Labour values.
Is that possible with some of your colleagues, though? Because we saw a huge rebellion on the welfare bill last time out.
I'd hope so.
Yeah? Bring the welfare bill down?
We need to.
Allied to that, and again, noting it's not your brief, Mike, but the pensions triple lock is an issue that is frequently spoken about,
yes.
Just to get you in some trouble. I mean, it would seem to me...
Am I going to commit to something here and change the
Mike Tapp abolishes the triple lock.
I'll leave that to Jeremy Hunt.
Yes. I mean, on the surface, pensions go up by 2.5%, wages are inflation, the highest of those three. At a time where we've got 1 million NEETs, young people who can't get into employment, education or training. I mean, is the triple lock genuinely sustainable?
Let's create more jobs for young people, let's grow the economy, and let's end that reliance on low-skilled overseas workers to create more jobs for those who are out of education, employment and training. That will grow the economy more, and then we all will feel that.
Is the triple lock sustainable?
Absolutely.
Okay. Joe online says, UK allies have taken more decisive action against the Muslim Brotherhood than the British government has. Do you think the UK has become a permissive environment for Islamic networks like the Muslim Brotherhood? Says Joe, submitted online.
Sorry, read the beginning.
I'll read it again, sorry. UK allies have taken more decisive action. Other countries taken more decisive action against the Muslim Brotherhood than the British government has. Have we become a permissive environment for Islamist networks, is their description of it, like the Muslim Brotherhood?
Well, I've worked in counter-terrorism in my career, and I can assure you we are one of the least permissive environments for terrorists, without any shadow of a doubt. It's not for politicians to decide which organisations are prescribed. That has to come from the security services, and of course we don't talk about individual cases because that would be a breach of confidentiality. So it depends on the threat that is posed, and that has to be analysed by professionals.
Okay. Something I was keen to talk to you about earlier on as well is about universities, and we see a lot of universities, a lot of young people watching this, Politics UK. Some of what happens in universities, be that anti-Semitism or be that in some cases sort of extremism, can be allowed to fester. Do you think that's a bit of a problem?
Well, look, we've seen in the past that there have been speakers visiting universities who will feed into that, and we're doing our best in the Home Office to ensure that if you're here to promote extremism, then you're not welcome. And we have to find that balance between protest and unacceptable disruption, for example. On the streets of London's a good example of that, and we're working hard to find that. But universities are there as they're there for people to discuss ideas and to find themselves and to work out their politics and to get passionate, and there's nothing wrong with that. But of course, if it breaks the law, then you should be prosecuted.
Go back to your brief. Are you enjoying it? Because, as you say, you came from law enforcement before. Remind me, you were with the NCA?
Military first.
You were military first,
NCA,
then the NCA, National Crime Agency. Is it frustrating in government not being able to... Because even when you're explaining the ILR changes there, I can tell a bit of you is... Because how it works and things have to be done properly, but it's a very slow process compared to perhaps what you were used to before you became an MP.
Yeah, it is frustrating. I'd like to see it sped up. I'd like to see the chamber more efficient. The fact that the same question gets asked 10 times is not a debate. I'd like to see us staying in Parliament later if we need to get legislation through quicker. I'd have camp beds in if it was my choice. But
well,
I'm
not sure the workers' rights reforms would allow that. Some of your poor colleagues.
We work hard as MPs and as ministers, but we can work harder. We've got to deliver for the country. Yeah. We've got one shot at this, so it's important that we move it as fast as we can, in my view.
Should we ban drinking in Parliament, as
No,
Hannah Spencer says?
I've got a beer here. You can have a pint. Great. You can have a pint in Parliament, as long as it doesn't get in the way.
I love it. Last question. Scooby-Doo's been very well behaved.
He has, hasn't he?
Would you advise all ministers to have a companion like Scooby-Doo? I don't know if Shabana's got any pets.
I don't know. I would. Well, you can't take dogs into Parliament. So he's come into the Home Office a few times.
Right.
But look, dogs are angels without wings. They're the most incredible animals on the planet, in my view. So, if you've got the time, then absolutely get a dog. If you haven't, then don't, because they'll be, alone too much.
Mike Tapp, thank you very much for joining us. Let's give it up for Mike Tapp.
Cheers.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to get into our panel discussion now, reflecting on some of the themes that you will have heard that are sort of touched on with Mike Tapp. Hopefully you can sort of expand on those now. To get my two panellists to introduce themselves, can we start with yourself, please?
My name is Julia Villamines. I'm the co-founder of the Centre for British Progress. We're a think tank focused on economic growth and progress in science and technology.
Brilliant.
And my name is Josh Newbury. I'm the Labour Member of Parliament for Cannock Chase in Staffordshire.
Great stuff. Julie, let's start with you. What did you make of some of what Mike Tapp was? He's quite direct, isn't he, compared to other ministers?
Well, it helps to have such a charming dog next to you.
Yes, that's very true.
So I think the Home Office, on many counts, get it. They get that people are frustrated with the system that has promised control but has delivered chaos. They get that there are instances of gaming and fraud. They get that wages have been suppressed at times. They also get that migration in many cases has brought lots of diversity and strength to the country. And on all of these fronts, I think that the Home Office is actually pushing in the right direction. There are particular policy decisions that I think that have been made that in trying to rationalise a system have added more complexity to a system that has made it more difficult for high-skilled workers at the very top end, the very people that we say that we want to attract to come to the country. So some instances where we have said that what we want to do is restrict, we've actually created some weird economic incentives that make it such that really high-skilled people wouldn't want to come into the country, but maybe lower-skilled people will have more of a benefit to come in. So one of the sort of weird policy decisions that seems really good on the surface, but actually once you start looking at the effects doesn't really work, is the immigration health surcharge.
Okay.
So it's this one-off cost that you put upon migrants to come into the country. We say it goes to the NHS. It actually goes to general taxation, so it doesn't actually go to the NHS. People would think that this would deter people who are lower skilled from coming into the country because it is a big upfront payment. But economics and behavioural economics shows us that actually, and empirics as well, show us that actually if your wage is going to increase a lot, and if the benefits you would get from social services, for example, would increase a lot, the amount you're willing to pay up front will be higher. Whereas if you are someone who can go anywhere in the world, for example, if you're a high earner, an AI researcher, for example, you're less likely to want to pay that upfront cost. And we have one of the highest upfront costs for visas in the world. So we have these things that seem like they make a lot of sense, but actually if you dig deeper down, it's not actually deterring the people we want to deter, and it is deterring the people that we want to have come into the country.
Josh, anything you wanted to pick up from what you heard your Labour colleague Mike Tapp say?
Well, I think you can always rely on Mike to be direct. So
Yes.
he always makes for a really good discussion because he will just tell you exactly what he thinks. Look, I think Mike is right that the system in many ways is broken. People in my constituency often raise immigration as an issue of concern for them. So we've got to listen to what people are saying and try and put in a system that people feel is fair. And I think that's the one word that I would always use is fair, because we're a nation of queuers famously. People say that we like to queue as Brits, but I think actually people want to know that if resources are stretched or if time is pressured, that everybody gets their fair shot. And that's why people get so angry when they see, for example, people coming over on small boats, or we hear about people overstaying their visas, for example. It really tugs at that principle of fairness that underpins much of what we do in this country. And so I think Mike, in many ways, has got the right diagnosis of the problem, and the Home Office is going about it in a way where we're trying to listen to as many voices as possible. And I think get to a point where we're balancing all these competing interests. You know, as we were just hearing, you know, there are so many things that a migration system has got to do, particularly in an increasingly globalised, competitive world. But I think if people in my constituency don't feel that the system is fair and that they've got a fair crack of the whip, particularly, as Mike was saying, younger people who want to get into the job market, get their first home, get a foot on the ladder, then something's seriously wrong. So we've got to strike the right balance, and I think in many ways the Home Office team are doing a great job with that.
And what the most visceral example of that is small boat crossings, you think, in terms of the fairness argument?
Well, I think when people see that on TV and they feel that those people are somehow jumping a queue, I don't think that's how it is in reality, because we know that if people are claiming asylum, for example, their claim is going to be processed fairly in the same sort of vein as everybody else's. But it's that sense that people who are coming in through legal routes are often having to wait a long time to be able to get to this country. And they feel that if people are kind of trying to cheat the system effectively. Now, there's a big debate to be had, as Mike was saying, around safe and legal routes. We've got to make sure that they're in place where appropriate. But I do think the fundamentals of trying to stop boat crossings is really important to people. I think whether you're a progressive or whether you want a more hardline immigration policy, everybody can agree that people crowding onto dinghies, risking their life, crossing the channel is not a good idea.
Yeah, and go back to you, Julie. I mean, obviously it clearly is an issue and it irks with people, understandably. In some ways, though, does it distract from the overall migration debate when we focus very clearly on tens of thousands of people coming across on small boats, as opposed to the sort of general topic of migration and getting into the debates like ILR, like we did with Mike Tapp?
Yeah, I think small boats matter. They obviously matter because they're highly salient. But I would say that we put a little bit too much weight on small boats and small boat crossings. People are upset not only because of what they see on the television, but because of other changes in their economy. And in particular, I think that the fairness argument extends not only to small boats. A lot of the people that I speak to, they talk about it not feeling fair that people can come and undercut wages, or it not feeling fair that people can come and, in some cases, settle where they haven't contributed over a period of time the amount that one would expect someone to have contributed. Now, I think that there are many people that will feel this what they consider to be this injustice, and react in ways that are not very not very fair in their own right, and in ways that do not feel very humane. But I also think at the same time that it would renege a government's responsibility to represent its people to not listen to that. Our position is that there's a pretty good way to listen to all parties and also think about the growth of the country and the fiscal situation of the country. Because remember, we have a shrinking population, we also have an exploding welfare bill, and that's not just because people are out of work, it's also because of our aging population. We need contributors. But to build a migration system around contributors means having a clear eye of who's actually both financially and also fiscally over their entire lifetime contributing to the state, and who's not. If you are contributing, then I believe we should welcome those people, and then where people are not contributing, then at the end of the day, we should think about what this country needs.
Staying with you, you mentioned welfare and an ageing population there. It's not that I'm mildly obsessed with this, but the triple lock is something I tried to get out of Mike Tapp there. And there is a real concern, it would seem to me, about intergenerational unfairness. We've just had this massive report done, or the sort of interim report by Alan Milburn, the former Health Secretary, into NEETs, those not in education, employment or training, 16 to 24. I mean, that should dominate a lot more. It did last week, but you feel like that should dominate a lot more discussion than it does, and perhaps looking at pensions, which make up the majority of the welfare bill?
So I will say that I would reform the triple lock if I had the ability to. I think it's politically very difficult. It's very easy for us online and us young people to say, actually, you should just reform this. But ultimately, it means taking money away from people that are very politically active, and that's very tough. So we have to be graceful and say to politicians, to some extent, that we understand where they're coming from there. I would push back slightly on the framing around NEETs. I don't think that the reason that we have high youth unemployment in this country currently is because of what we're doing with pensions.
Sure.
Maybe in some way, in the sense that we need to raise more money for
the optics, isn't it?
And
I
the optics
appreciate
are
what you're
important.
saying. Yeah.
But we've actually done quite a bit of research into the labour market and what are the causes of this slowdown, especially for that particular portion of the population. And really, we're looking at a couple of complicated factors. But the cost of employment has gone up. It's far harder for people and for employers to take a chance on a young person that hasn't proven themselves. That's both a mix of, and this is not just on this government, it's also on previous governments. It's a trend that has been occurring over a very long period of time. But we've got a national living wage and a minimum wage that's not regional. And in London, you have much higher wages. That brings up the national living wage for the whole country. So you get lots of regions where employers cannot afford that, and that's a regional equality problem. That's in part why you see some unemployment figures being higher in particular regions than in London. And of course, taxing employment does have effects around the number of employers that are willing to take a risk when it comes to young people. And we may well see that structural shifts in the economy with new technologies coming online affects things as well. So, with that in mind, it would make a lot of sense to think about this, the other elements that are slowing down employment of young people.
I mean, there's some fair points there, Josh. Do you worry that, however well-meaning, your party and government have sort of destroyed the Saturday job for youngsters?
No, I don't think that's the case, actually. When I speak to a lot of businesses in my constituency, they're not saying that they're no longer hiring young people. Actually, quite a few of them have said to me that they are still very much looking for that. They often raise with me an issue around experience of it, perhaps in a customer service perspective, or kind of the qualifications that young people are coming out of further education with. As like the main barriers to employment, particularly when they think about the skills they're going to need in sort of 10, 20 years' time. And that's where I think we really need to focus, is making sure that young people are really equipped with the skills. Now, there is a discussion amongst some people around particularly Gen Z and the effect of COVID on them, and whether they are ready to step into those typical Saturday jobs. I mean, my first Saturday job was in a camping store.
Camping store?
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I literally sold tents.
Right.
And it was brilliant for me to step into that, because I was quite a shy 16-year-old, and I needed to get that experience to get me to come out of my comfort zone, and I want those opportunities to be there for young people. I think absolutely Judy is right that, when you take decisions on payroll taxes, it can have an impact. The government's not pretended otherwise, but we are trying to strike a balance with everything that we're doing, whether it's the immigration system, about getting it right with who we're allowing into the country, and whether it's a taxation system, about making sure that the public finances are underpinned stably, and trying to make sure that people taking their wages back home are not feeling the pinch of that. It's always difficult calls when you're in government, but I think a lot of my local businesses are just concerned to make sure that young people are stepping into the door prepared for what the world of work demands.
And the triple lock, can I get you on that? Get you to make news and call for it to be scrapped?
Well, I'll be as frank as Mike. I think it's always a difficult question for politicians, and I think you see this right across developed economies, that we've got ageing societies, right? So we constantly have to look at that balance between the generations to make sure that we can pay pensions like well into the future. But I think when I look at my constituency, I still see a lot of pensioner poverty, sadly. I wouldn't want to turn around to those people and say, like, we think now is a great time to be looking to cut your pension or not, increase your pension in line with the way costs are going up.
To get pension credit, though, wouldn't you? I mean, it's not saying for poorer pensioners to leave them out. It's just about the sort of, I mean, we're looking at Alan Sugars and people like that here as well who benefit from the triple lock.
Yeah, but then I think you've seen
not to pick on Alan Sugar
with the whole debate over the winter fuel payment, that there are a lot of pensioners who sit just above that cut-off point for pension credit, who are also really, really struggling at the moment. And again, going back to that point of fairness, a lot of people will say to me, I've paid into the system my whole life, I should be able to have a relatively comfortable retirement, and I've got no qualms with that at all. I don't think it's a zero-sum game. I think we can help young people who are undoubtedly struggling. I graduated into a horrendous job market in 2013. I think young people who haven't gone to university for many, many years have been in an even worse position, and the government's actually saying that we need to completely refocus, look at technical education a lot more, but try and lift all boats in that as well, make sure that young people today do have those opportunities. And there's lots of things we are doing alongside also making sure that pensioners aren't in poverty when they retire.
Going back to the migration debate, Julia, obviously led our conversation with Mike Tapp given his role. How do politicians make the case for what you touched on in your first answer about where migration can help us lead the way in some of those, I say emerging, AI is very much here, but in some of those huge sectors that are ever growing?
Yeah, I think they have to prove that that's the case, that migration is improving our economic and also economic outcomes and position in the world stage. One of the things that we've advocated for is a yearly migration report, where we look at particular routes, how much individuals within that route contribute over time, what kinds of outcomes we get for those individuals in those particular routes, so that we can then have transparency, not just for decision making on the government side, but also for the population at large, to say, okay, well, when it comes to this route, we're actually doing quite well on the metrics that we care about, and on other routes we might want to be tinkering around with different things. I also think that having a legal migration system that is explicitly designed around net fiscal contribution over time would allow any politician that would go in, as long as it is honestly designed to do so, and we have a plan for that, to say our migration system will always benefit the British state, the country, and you personally, because it would mean that our social system would have more to, and our public services would have more to play with. The problem currently is that we can't say that, both because we don't have the data to back it up, and also because, to be frank, our migration system is very weedly, and it's very difficult to track which policies are working and which policies aren't.
And Josh, lastly to you, I was speaking again with Mike Tapp about the general direction of the party. I mean, it's very easy for journalists like me to sort of scoff at minister resigns and whatnot, but clearly things haven't been perfect. Are you content that there is a clear path going forward to achieve that change that you obviously campaigned on, you were elected on?
Well, I don't think when you're in government you can ever sit back and be content. I think you've always got to kind of be hot on your heels with all areas of policy. And I was quite frank, after the last year's local elections, which were a disaster in my constituency, and we saw the same thing this year.
Who won in your constituency? Was it
Reform?
Was it Reform? Right,
yeah.
Okay.
And like a lot of the Midlands, like a lot of those kind of bellwether seats that decide who can get the keys to number 10 at the end of the day, that we need to listen to what people are saying to us. It's not just, I don't think, a case of saying we need to go further and faster on what we're already doing. We need to kind of fundamentally look at why people aren't seeing and feeling a lot of the change that, Mike spoke about, the things that are moving in the right direction. In many ways, we are turning a corner on public services and the economy. We're outperforming many of our rivals internationally. But for me, the fundamental is, do my constituents back at home in Cannock Chase feel that their lives are getting better? And particularly in light of the invasion of Iran, many people are saying that things are going in the wrong direction for them, and you've got to be humble and realistic in politics. Like, you can't say, well, actually they're just not looking at all these things that are going wonderfully. You've got to say, like, right, okay, first of all, what do people need to feel to change their perception of the government and the direction the country's going in? And also, like, how are we communicating what we're doing to them? I think one of the things on migration in particular, when I speak to people on the doorstep in my constituency and they say, you know, what's going on with immigration, are you going to stop the boats? And I talk about some of the things we've already done, legislation we've already passed that gives the police extra powers, the figures that were mentioned around net migration coming down 82% from the peak. People often are a bit taken aback and they're like, okay, well, I didn't realise that was happening. So we've got to do a better job also of talking about what we are doing, because I think, again, a lot of people just aren't hearing that.
Brilliant. Well, that's actually all we've got time for on the panel discussion. So that brings to an end to that part of the debate. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you for those watching online as well. Of course, thanks earlier on to Mike Tapp, who was with us sharing his thoughts and his brought his lovely dog Scooby with us, which was great. Thank you for those who asked questions, who submitted questions. You can carry on the conversation by following and commenting on X, on LinkedIn, Instagram. Just go to, and TikTok, of course, just go to Politics UK on there. There'll now be a reception until 9 o'clock. I'm told the bar finishes at 8:30. I've got to run off and do an LBC show, so I will not be having any beers. But continue the conversation and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.